Hello fellow readers, I've been following this blog for quite a few years and I never imagined I'd be in a situation where I'd need your advice, but here I am. I'm a 24-year-old guy, you can call me Jeff, and my fiancée is a 22-year-old woman, let's call her Julie. Greetings to all my fellow readers. Although I've been a regular follower of this blog for several years, I never thought I'd find myself in a position where I'd have to ask for guidance. Yet, here I am now. I'm a 24-year-old man, feel free to refer to me as Jeff, and my fiancée is a 22-year-old woman, who we'll call Julie. I first met Julie at a fast casual restaurant where she works as a cashier and serves beverages. Right from the start I found her extremely attractive and would always find reasons to strike up a conversation with her. If happened to be busy with another customer, I let them go ahead of me just so I could place my order with her. Gradually I began frequenting the restaurant for lunch, about 2-3 times a week, just to chat with her, but I never quite found the courage to ask her out. My initial encounter with Julie occurred at the casual dining spot where she's employed, managing the register and serving drinks. Immediately, I was incredibly drawn to her, and I consistently sought opportunities to engage her in conversation. If she was occupied with another patron, I deliberately hold back and allow others to pass so that I could interact with her specifically when ordering. Over time, I started visiting the restaurant for lunch 2 or 3 times weekly, primarily to speak with her. Despite this effort, I could never summon the nerve to actually propose a date. Then one day while she was ringing up my order, she wrote her phone number on the back of my receipt and encouraged me to call her that evening, expressing how much she enjoyed our conversations. I did just that and we talked for a solid 2 hours. Toward the end of our conversation, I mustered up the courage to ask her out on an official dinner date. The date went really well and she opened up to me about her life, revealing that she is the mother of a 4-year-old boy. She became a mother during the beginning of her senior year in high school. As she told me, the child's father was never a part of the child's life. He moved to Georgia after graduation and she hasn't had any contact with him since. She also mentioned casually dating a few other guys in the past, but nothing had turned serious on my end. I had 2 previous girlfriends before Julia. Eventually, as she was processing my payment one afternoon, she wrote her number on the reverse of my receipt and urged me to call that night, noting how much she enjoyed our chats. I followed through, and we spoke for a full 2 hours. Before hanging up, I finally got up the nerve to ask her out for a formal dinner. The date was wonderful, and she confided details about her personal life, sharing that she is a mother to a 4-year-old son. She became pregnant at the start of her last year of high school. She explained that the boy's father was absent from their lives. He relocated to Georgia after finishing school, and she hasn't heard from him since. She also mentioned having dated a few other men casually over the years, though none of those relationships became serious. Before Julie, I had been involved with 2 other girlfriends. When I learned about her child, I expressed that I'd like to maintain our friendship but wasn't interested in pursuing anything more given her existing responsibilities as a mother. She was understanding and agreed with this arrangement. We continued to hang out, meeting up once or twice a week, just enjoying each other's company. This dynamic continued for nearly 2 months until one day she surprised me with a kiss. From that point, our next 3 dates gradually became more passionate and eventually we took our relationship to the next level. It was an amazing experience and from then on I was fully committed. We started spending every evening and weekend together, and after a couple of weeks she introduced me to her son, whom we'll call Josh. Josh and I immediately connected and he started joining us almost every time we were together. Even though I initially had reservations, I ended up falling in love with Julie and her son. Hearing about her son, I told her I wanted to stay friends but couldn't commit to anything serious because of her existing parental duties. She was completely understanding and respected my decision. We kept seeing each other, meeting up once or twice weekly, simply enjoying the other's presence. This pattern lasted for close to 2 months until she unexpectedly kissed me one day. Following that, our subsequent 3 outings progressively grew more intense, culminating in our relationship becoming intimate. The experience was incredible, and I was completely devoted afterward. We began spending all our free time together, evenings and weekends, and within a few weeks, she introduced me to her son, whom we'll name Josh. Josh and I hit it off instantly, and he started joining us almost every time we met. Despite my initial reluctance, I eventually fell deeply in love with both Julie and her son. When I discussed the situation with my parents, they had their doubts. They believed that given my recent graduation and stable job, I could find someone else. My mother questioned whether I truly wanted to take on the responsibility of raising another man's child. I clarified that we weren't at that stage yet, but would consider it in the right circumstances. A few weeks later, I introduced Julie and Josh to my parents, and their opinions began to shift. They found Julie to be very nice and quickly developed a fondness for Josh. Afterward, they expressed their approval of our relationship but advised caution since I had only known Julie for a few months at that point. I assured them that I would proceed at a comfortable pace. When I brought the matter up with my parents, they expressed skepticism. Given that I had recently graduated and secured a steady job, they felt I could easily meet other people. My mother specifically questioned whether I genuinely wished to shoulder the burden of raising a child who wasn't biologically mine. I explained that while we weren't ready for that step yet, I would consider it under the right conditions. Several weeks later, I introduced Julie and Josh to my parents, and their feelings started to change. They found Julie very pleasant and quickly grew attached to Josh. Following the meeting, they gave their blessing to our relationship but cautioned me to take things slowly, as I had only known Julie for a brief period. I promised them I would move forward deliberately. During that period, Julie had a roommate named Jane. Jane also worked at the restaurant with Julie and was engaged to be married after Julie and I had been dating for 8 months. She informed me that Jane wanted to move in with her fiancé, but Julie couldn't afford the rent without Jane. After some consideration, I decided to move in with Julie and Josh, allowing Jane to make her move. I had lived with my parents throughout my entire life, even during my college years, and I felt it was time for me to become more independent. Julie and Jane supported my decision, but my parents strongly objected. They emphasized that it was ultimately my choice but expressed their concerns. I reassured them that it wasn't a long-term commitment and I wouldn't be signing a lease. I was simply taking over Jane's share of the rent payment. When I moved in, there were still 7 months left on the lease. Around that time, Julie shared an apartment with a roommate named Jane, who also worked at the same restaurant and was engaged. 8 months into our relationship, Julie told me Jane was planning to move in with her fiancé, and Julie wouldn't be able to cover the full rent alone. After thinking it over, I chose to move in with Julie and Josh, which freed Jane up to move out. Having lived with my parents my whole life, including through university, I felt ready to gain more autonomy. Julie and Jane supported my choice, but my parents strongly disagreed. They made it clear it was my final decision but voiced their anxieties. I assured them it wasn't a permanent arrangement, as I wouldn't be co-signing the lease. I would just take over Jane's portion of the rent for the remaining 7 months of the lease term. Fast forward, Julie, Josh and I have been living together for almost 5 months now and everything has been going smoothly. I had developed strong feelings for Julie and I had grown very close to little Josh. We were so close that he once told me he wished I were his dad, even though I suspected Julie encouraged him to say that. I knew he genuinely liked me. As I mentioned, everything was going well until an unusual incident occurred about 3 weeks ago. One night after Josh had fallen asleep, Julie and I were talking. She mentioned that one of her co-workers, Jamie, found me attractive and expressed interest in being intimate with me. Shockingly, she also revealed that Jamie's husband wanted to have an affair with her. I was completely taken aback and disgusted by this revelation. I informed Julie that I appreciated the compliment but had absolutely no interest in being intimate with Jamie. I also inquired about Jamie's husband, and this was the first time Julie had mentioned anything about this situation to me, which left me quite upset. Rather than addressing my question directly, Julie proceeded to ask if I was aware that Jay and her husband were bi and involved in an open relationship. I responded, no, how would I have known that unless you told me? Julie then wanted to know if I thought any less of them too, which I replied that I didn't judge them. I mentioned that as adults they were free to make their own choices, but that such a lifestyle wasn't something I personally embraced, and I hoped it wasn't something Julie was considering either. We concluded the conversation there, but Julie's demeanor left me pondering this matter intermittently over the past few weeks. To speed things up, Julie, Josh, and I have been cohabiting for almost 5 months, and everything had been excellent. My affection for Julie had deepened, and my bond with young Josh had become very strong. We were so close that he once told me he wished I was his father, and while I suspected Julie might have prompted him, I believed his affection was real. As I said, everything was fine until a strange event happened about 3 weeks ago. One evening, after Josh was asleep, Julie and I were chatting. She mentioned that Jamie, a colleague of hers, thought I was attractive and was interested in sleeping with me. She then dropped the bombshell that Jamie's husband was also interested in having an affair with her. I was entirely shocked and repulsed by this news. I told Julie I appreciated the compliment but had zero interest in Jamie. I also asked about Jamie's husband, which upset me since it was the first I was hearing of this particular situation. Instead of answering my question, Julie then asked if I knew that Jamie and her husband were bisexual and in an open relationship. I answered, "No, how could I have known that unless you told me?" Julie then asked if I judged them, and I replied that I didn't. I told her that, as adults, they were free to live as they pleased, but that this was not a lifestyle I would ever participate in, and I hoped it wasn't something she was thinking about. We ended the discussion there, but Julie's attitude afterward made me think about the issue on and off for the next few weeks. Now let's fast forward to yesterday, or more precisely last night, when everything took a dramatic turn. Julie's former roommate Jane and her long-term boyfriend got married. They had a civil ceremony at 5:30 p.m. followed by a lively reception. The party extended into the early hours of the morning. I typically don't consume alcohol, and I was the designated driver for Julie and several of her friends due to my large SUV. The group consisted of Jimmy, her husband, and another co-worker of Julie's, Jess, who attended the wedding solo. These three friends had plans to indulge in drinking and get intoxicated. Julie mentioned she would limit herself to only 1 or 2 drinks, claiming she didn't get drunk anymore. In fact, I had never witnessed her drink prior to last night. As the night went on, everyone was enjoying themselves, imbibing and dancing. Around 11:30 I noticed that Julie appeared slightly tipsy, which struck me as odd since I had only seen her nurse 2 drinks all night. I asked her if she had consumed more alcohol, and she replied in the negative. By this time it was nearly 1 a.m. and the last of the partygoers were leaving. I gathered everyone who had ridden with me into my vehicle. Our first stop was Jess, the single attendee whom I dropped off. The next stop was at Jay and her husband's apartment. When I pulled over, Julie mentioned that she needed to use the restroom. She exited the car and followed Jimmy and her husband, whom I'll call Joe, up the stairs to their apartment. I remained in my vehicle with the engine running, assuming she would return within a few minutes. After waiting for about 10-12 minutes, I turned off the engine and decided to check on the situation. Upon reaching the door, I knocked and entered. Inside the living room stood Julie along with Jimmy and Joe, all visibly intoxicated from their conversation. Without any prompting from me, Julie suggested, "Let's sleep here tonight." I nervously chuckled and replied, "No, let'n go," but what she said next left me stunned. Julie continued saying, "They've got 2 bedrooms. You and Jamie can sleep together, and me and Joe can sleep together." Hearing this, disbelief and anger welled up within me. I reiterated, "Let'n go." However, Julie roared, "I'm not going anywhere, and you can't make me. You can stay here with us or you can leave." Frustrated, I approached her, gently reaching for her hand. She pulled her hand away abruptly and snapped, "Get off me." In response, I said okay, turned and exited the door. I was burning with anger at this point, thoughts racing through my mind at lightning speed. Now, let's fast forward to a major turning point. Yesterday, or more accurately, last night. Jane, Julie's ex-roommate, married her longtime boyfriend. They had a short civil ceremony at 5:30 p.m., followed by a lively party that went until the early morning. I rarely drink, so I acted as the designated driver for Julie and a few friends, thanks to my large SUV. The group included Jamie, her husband, we'll call him Joe, and another one of Julie's colleagues, Jess, who came alone. All 3 planned to drink heavily. Julie stated she'd only have 1 or 2 drinks, claiming she no longer got drunk. In fact, I had never seen her drink before last night. As the evening progressed, everyone was having a good time, drinking and dancing. Around 11:30, I noticed Julie seemed slightly tipsy, which I found strange since I'd only observed her slowly sipping 2 drinks all evening. I asked if she'd had more, and she denied it. It was nearly 1 a.m., and the last guests were leaving. I gathered the people who rode with me into the car. First, I dropped off Jess, the single guest. The next stop was Jamie and Joe's apartment. When I parked, Julie said she needed the bathroom, got out, and followed Jamie and Joe upstairs to their place. I kept the engine running, expecting her to return in a couple of minutes. After waiting for 10 to 12 minutes, I turned off the car and went up to check. I knocked and entered. In the living room, I found Julie, Jamie, and Joe, all clearly drunk, talking. Unprompted, Julie suggested, "Let's just sleep here tonight." I gave a nervous laugh and said, "No, let's leave." But her next statement was astonishing. Julie continued, saying, "They have 2 bedrooms. You and Jamie can sleep together, and Joe and I can sleep together." Disbelief and rage immediately flooded me. I repeated, "Let's go." Julie shot back, "I'm not leaving, and you can't make me. You can either stay here with us or go." Frustrated, I moved toward her and gently took her hand. She yanked it away abruptly and snapped, "Get off me." I simply said, "Okay," turned, and walked out the door. At that moment, I was consumed by anger, my thoughts racing furiously. I drove back to our apartment briefly. Contemplated returning to see what was happening. Then I realized I no longer cared about her actions. At this point I was done. I made the decision to pack all my personal belongings into my SUV and move out. So from around 1:45 a.m. to just before 3 a.m. I went in and out of the apartment loading up my vehicle. Subsequently I drove to my parents' house and called them on the way to let them know I was coming over. They were not critical or judgmental, but my dad offered his perspective, saying, "Son, it's best you found this out now." The following morning around 9:30 a.m. Julie called me, but I allowed it to go to voicemail. She left me a message as if nothing had occurred, saying, "Hi babe, it's me. I hope you slept well. I fell asleep as soon as you left. Come get me as soon as you can. I love you." She called again 15 minutes later, and once again I chose not to answer. She continued calling repeatedly. Her voicemails became increasingly frantic, and she also started texting me. In one of the texts she admitted, "Jimmy just told me what an a-hole I was to you last night. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean it. Please come get me." I did not respond to any of these messages. Approximately an hour later she left me another voicemail, realizing that I had moved out of the apartment. In this message her desperation was evident as she asked why I had left and claimed that she was drunk, emphasizing that she didn't mean anything she had said. She also reassured me that nothing had happened between her, Joe, or Jimmy. She concluded by saying, "I know you're at your parents' place and I'm coming over." Upon hearing this, I didn't want her to create a scene at my parents' house, so I quickly sent her a text. She immediately responded with a text pleading for me to come back home. I replied simply, "No, we are done." She texted back claiming it was all a big misunderstanding. Again I responded firmly, "We are done." She then texted back saying she was coming over to my parents' house. I messaged her letting her know that I was leaving for the day and wouldn't be there when she arrived. I informed my parents about her impending visit and expressed my desire to avoid seeing her and any potential scene she might create. At this point I had no idea how she would react, as she had been a completely different person last night from the woman I had known. I left the house and headed to a coffee shop, planning to stay there until she left. I asked my parents to call me if she showed up. About half an hour later my dad called and informed me that Julie had been there and had left. He had greeted her at the door and informed her that I wasn't at home and that he didn't know when I would return. This all transpired just a few hours ago, and I'm still here at the coffee shop typing out this lengthy post, which has been quite cathartic by the way. Now I'm experiencing some doubts regarding my choice. Do you believe I reacted too strongly, or was my decision justified? Julie has been a fantastic partner until last night. Will this be something I'll reflect on in 10 years with regret or celebration? I drove back to our apartment. I considered going back to see what was happening, but then I realized I simply didn't care anymore about her behavior. I was finished. I resolved to pack all my possessions into my SUV and move out. From about 1:45 a.m. until just before 3 a.m., I continuously moved my things into the vehicle. Afterward, I drove to my parents' house, calling them en route to let them know I was arriving. They weren't judgmental, but my dad commented, "Son, it's better that you found this out now." The next morning, around 9:30 a.m., Julie called, but I let it go to voicemail. She left a message acting as if nothing was wrong, saying, "Hi babe, it's me. I hope you slept well. I fell asleep as soon as you left. Come get me as soon as you can. I love you." She called again 15 minutes later, and again, I didn't answer. She continued to call incessantly, and her voicemails grew increasingly frantic. She also began texting me. In one message, she confessed, "Jamie just told me how much of an a-hole I was to you last night. I'm so sorry, I didn't mean it. Please come get me." I ignored all of her communication. About an hour later, she left another voicemail, having figured out that I had moved out. Her message was desperate. She demanded to know why I'd left, blaming her actions on being drunk and insisting she didn't mean anything she said. She also guaranteed that nothing had occurred between her, Joe, or Jamie. She finished by saying, "I know you're at your parents' place, and I'm coming over." Not wanting her to cause a scene there, I quickly sent her a text. She instantly replied, begging me to return home. I simply texted back, "No, we are done." She replied claiming it was all a major misunderstanding. Again, I replied firmly, "We are done." She then texted that she was coming to my parents' house. I messaged her back, informing her that I would be leaving for the day and wouldn't be there when she arrived. I told my parents about her upcoming visit, emphasizing that I wanted to avoid her and any potential drama she might create. Since the person she was last night was completely unlike the woman I knew, I had no idea how she would react. I left the house and went to a coffee shop, planning to stay until she departed. I asked my parents to call me if she showed up. About 30 minutes later, my dad called and confirmed that Julie had come and gone. He met her at the door and told her I wasn't home and he didn't know when I'd be back. This all happened just hours ago, and I'm still at the coffee shop writing this long post, which has been quite therapeutic, by the way. Now, I'm questioning my decision. Do you think I overreacted, or was my choice justified? Julie had been a wonderful partner right up until last night. Will this be something I look back on in 10 years with regret or with celebration? Hello everyone, I've received several requests for an update, so I wanted to fill you in on the current situation. Julie and I are officially no longer together. The whole ordeal with her turned out to be a massive deception. It's incredible how naive I was. I want to clarify that I haven't spoken to Julie in person or on the phone since the day everything came to light. We've only communicated through text messages. Right after my last post, Julie kept texting me insisting that nothing happened between her, Joe, or Jamie. She even had both Joe and Jimmy call me and leave messages claiming they were all just friends and nothing else had ever occurred between them. They swore on their lives and more to this fact. Well, I've since learned that this was far from the truth. Recently I joined an axe-throwing class offered at a local pub. In my class was the single girl who had ridden with us to the wedding, Jess. After our first class, I asked Jess if she had time to grab a drink and catch up, and she agreed. We were chatting and she inquired about the reason behind my breakup with Julie, so I told her. The first thing Jess revealed was that Julie, Jimmy and Joe were downing shots at the wedding every time I took a break to go to the bathroom or get some fresh air. What she disclosed next shook me to my core. Jess mentioned that Julie, Jamie and Joe have been engaging in threesomes regularly for the past 2 years. She assumed I knew about it since Julie had told everyone we were polyamorous. According to Jess, this unconventional relationship was common knowledge among the restaurant staff, and I could confirm it with Jane or anyone else from there. My initial thought was, when did they find the time to do this? Julie and I were rarely apart except when we were at work. What a fool I've been, but I've certainly learned my lesson. I've become a much wiser and stronger person through all of this. Regarding Julie being bi and polyamorous, if that's her preference, fine, but why did she have to deceive me like that? What a terrible thing to do. From now on I'm strictly into casual dating. On that note, Jess and I have started a friends with benefits arrangement and it's been fantastic so far. Julie has no idea. She still reaches out to me every few days pleading for me to return. I've never responded and I never will. All right, that was a fun story. Now let's move on to another exciting one. Stay tuned and let's dive in. Hello everyone. Many of you requested a status report, so here's the current update. Julie and I are officially broken up. The entire experience with her turned out to be a massive betrayal. It's unbelievable how gullible I was. I should mention that I haven't spoken with Julie in person or on the phone since the situation blew up. Our communication has been limited to texting. Immediately after my last post, Julie continued messaging me, arguing that nothing happened between her, Joe, or Jamie. She even convinced both Joe and Jamie to call me and leave messages asserting they were only friends and had never been involved romantically, swearing on everything to back this up. However, I've since discovered that this was a complete fabrication. I recently enrolled in an axe-throwing class at a nearby pub, and Jess, the single co-worker who rode with us to the wedding, was also in my class. After our first session, I asked Jess if she wanted to grab a drink and catch up, and she agreed. As we talked, she asked why Julie and I had split up, so I explained the situation. The first thing Jess revealed was that Julie, Jamie, and Joe were constantly taking shots at the wedding whenever I was absent, such as during bathroom breaks or when stepping out for air. What she shared next deeply unsettled me. Jess told me that Julie, Jamie, and Joe have been regularly participating in three-way sexual encounters for the past 2 years. She assumed I was aware of it because Julie had supposedly told everyone that we were polyamorous. According to Jess, this unconventional arrangement was well known among the restaurant staff, and I could verify it with Jane or any other employee there. My immediate thought was, how did they find the time? Julie and I were rarely separated unless we were at work. I've been such a fool, but I've definitely learned a valuable lesson. I've come out of this a much wiser and more resilient person. If Julie's preference is to be bisexual and polyamorous, that's fine. But why did she feel the need to deceive me like that? What a terrible thing to do. From now on, I'm focusing exclusively on casual dating. On a side note, Jess and I have started a friends with benefits arrangement, which has been great so far. Julie is completely unaware. She still reaches out to me every few days, pleading for me to come back. I have never responded and never will. Well, that was one entertaining story. Let's move on to another captivating one. Stay tuned and let's jump in. I'm a 27-year-old guy. Let's call me Marvin, and I've been married to my wife who is 25. We'll call her Mary for a little over 6 months. Our journey began about 4 years ago when we met at a wedding reception which almost didn't happen for her. Mary attended the wedding as a last-minute guest with a friend who was part of the bridal party. I noticed she was spending some time alone while the bridal party was busy with photos, so I decided to strike up a conversation. We clicked right away, began dating, fell in love, and eventually moved in together. A year later, everyone around us thought we were the perfect couple in terms of work. Mary holds a staff position at a large company and I work in a professional role at a company's headquarters. I won't delve into more specifics to safeguard our privacy. Our entire relationship felt like a dream and I woke up each day looking forward to it. I'm a 27-year-old man, who we can name Marvin. I've been married to my 25-year-old wife, who we'll call Mary, for just over 6 months. Our history began about 4 years ago when we met at a wedding reception, an event she almost missed. Mary came as an unplanned guest with a friend who was in the wedding party. I noticed she was by herself while the main party was busy taking pictures, so I decided to talk to her. We instantly connected, began dating, fell in love, and moved in together a year later. To all our friends and family, we seemed like the ideal couple. Regarding our careers, Mary works as staff at a big corporation, and I hold a professional position at my company's main office. I won't share more details to keep our privacy intact. Our entire time together felt magical, and I genuinely woke up every morning excited about our life. However, just a few days ago my once perfect marriage shattered into countless pieces. It happened on a Thursday and I arrived home around the usual time, approximately 5:30 p.m. To my surprise, Mary was already there wearing a miniskirt and an apron. Normally she doesn't get home until 6 p.m. She welcomed me at the door with a warm kiss and hug, mentioning that she left work early to prepare my favorite dinner. She had even picked up our favorite wine and a cheesecake we both adore. Mary wanted to pamper me to show her love. I was so excited that I carried her into the bedroom and things heat up before dinner. After our passionate moment, we sat down to eat. She sat on my lap and we shared hugs and kisses in between bites and sips. Once we finished the meal, she stood in front of me, pressing her lower chest and stomach against my face. I wasn't sure what she was up to, but I played along. She then asked me to look up at her and drove the news, "We're pregnant." I couldn't have been happier. I stood up, lifted her and twirled her around. We both laughed and I must admit shed tears of joy, as we had been trying to start a family since our wedding night. We loaded the dishwasher and sat down to enjoy our cheesecake. That's when I suggested we do a three-way call with our parents to share the news together. Mary liked the idea, so we used her phone on speaker mode to tell both sets of parents about the exciting news they were overjoyed as this would be the first grandchild for both families. Afterward we cuddled on the couch and discussed getting ready for the baby. I felt incredible, words can't express it, but then things took a sudden turn. Mary left for the bathroom, and when she returned she had an envelope in her hand which she handed to me. She asked me not to be upset with her. I reassured her, telling her how could I be mad when she had just made me the happiest man in the world. As I opened the envelope, I found a 2-page handwritten letter from Mary to me. She began by expressing her love for me more than anything else in the world, followed by a string of all the wonderful things a wife could say about her husband. Then came the bombshell. She revealed that on 2 consecutive days just before Christmas she had a romantic encounter with a co-worker from her company. She went on to say it was the biggest mistake of her life and that she'd spend a lifetime making it up to me. Naturally, I was in shock by this point and asked what's going on. She simply looked at me, tears streaming down her face, and said how deeply sorry she was. I questioned, "Is this for real?" She confirmed it and broke into tears again, expressing her sincere apologies. I pressed her for the identity of the man, but she refused to answer, insisting it didn't matter since it was in the past and would never happen again. I asked once more, but she still refused, so I stood up and headed for the bedroom to start packing. I didn't just pack clothes, I also gathered some of my personal belongings because cheating was a deal breaker for me. However, just a few days ago my once perfect marriage shattered into countless pieces. It happened on a Thursday and I arrived home around the usual time, approximately 5:30 p.m. To my surprise, Mary was already there wearing a miniskirt and an apron. Normally she doesn't get home until 6 p.m. She welcomed me at the door with a warm kiss and hug, mentioning that she left work early to prepare my favorite dinner. She had even picked up our favorite wine and a cheesecake we both adore. Mary wanted to pamper me to show her love. I was so excited that I carried her into the bedroom and things heat up before dinner. After our passionate moment we sat down to eat. She sat on my lap and we shared hugs and kisses in between bites and sips. Once we finished the meal she stood in front of me, pressing her lower chest and stomach against my face. I wasn't sure what she was up to, but I played along. She then asked me to look up at her and drove the news, "We're pregnant." I couldn't have been happier. I stood up, lifted her and twirled her around. We both laughed and I must admit shed tears of joy, as we had been trying to start a family since our wedding night. We loaded the dishwasher and sat down to enjoy our cheesecake. That's when I suggested we do a 3-way call with our parents to share the news together. Mary liked the idea, so we used her phone on speaker mode to tell both sets of parents about the exciting news. They were overjoyed as this would be the first grandchild for both families. Afterward we cuddled on the couch and discussed getting ready for the baby. I felt incredible, words can't express it, but then things took a sudden turn. Mary left for the bathroom, and when she returned she had an envelope in her hand which she handed to me. She asked me not to be upset with her. I reassured her, telling her how could I be mad when she had just made me the happiest man in the world. As I opened the envelope I found a 2-page handwritten letter from Mary to me. She began by expressing her love for me more than anything else in the world, followed by a string of all the wonderful things a wife could say about her husband. Then came the bombshell. She revealed that on 2 consecutive days just before Christmas she had a romantic encounter with a co-worker from her company. She went on to say it was the biggest mistake of her life and that she'd spend a lifetime making it up to me. Naturally, I was in shock by this point and asked what's going on. She simply looked at me, tears streaming down her face, and said how deeply sorry she was. I questioned, "Is this for real?" She confirmed it and broke into tears again, expressing her sincere apologies. I pressed her for the identity of the man, but she refused to answer, insisting it didn't matter since it was in the past and would never happen again. I asked once more, but she still refused, so I stood up and headed for the bedroom to start packing. I didn't just pack clothes, I also gathered some of my personal belongings because cheating was a deal breaker for me. While I walked toward the apartment door, she was on the floor clinging to my left leg, crying. I continued walking slowly, gently trying to free myself from her grip. As I reached the door and opened it, she let go and stood up, and there happened to be a guy coming down the hall whom I greeted as I opened the door. After that I drove straight to my car and traveled 20 miles away to stay in a hotel for the night. On the way I phoned my nearby living brother and explained what had unfolded, and he couldn't believe it. He remarked that there might be no recovering from this, to which I replied that I wasn't certain because I felt utterly devastated and didn't want to dwell on it. He suggested that I come to his place, but I declined, saying I wasn't in the right state of mind to drive, so he insisted on coming over to the hotel to talk to me. The first thing my brother inquired about was whether the child was mine. My response was, "Oh man, I didn't even think about that." My self-esteem plummeted and I started venting my frustrations with my brother, patiently allowing me to let it all out. Once I had calmed down, my brother advised, "You need to devise a plan for how to handle this situation. I'll assist you." I initially expressed my desire to find a way to salvage the marriage, but my brother reasoned with me. He explained that I had a unique opportunity to walk away from this without major consequences, as an annulment of the marriage could be a possibility. He cited an example from our childhood where a neighbor cheated on his wife just 3 months into their marriage and the wife was granted an annulment. By the end of our conversation, I still felt terrible, but I had a clear plan for my next steps. As I headed for the apartment door, she was on the floor, weeping and gripping my left leg. I kept walking slowly, trying gently to free myself from her hold. When I reached and opened the door, she let go and stood up. I briefly exchanged a greeting with a man passing by in the hallway as I exited. After that, I went directly to my car and drove 20 miles away to spend the night in a hotel. On the way, I called my brother, who lives nearby, and explained everything that had happened. He was shocked, commenting that the marriage might be irreparable. I told him I wasn't sure, as I felt completely crushed and didn't want to think about it. He suggested I come to his house, but I refused, saying I wasn't stable enough to drive. So, he insisted on coming to the hotel to talk. The first thing my brother asked was if the baby was mine. My reply was, "Oh, man, I didn't even consider that." My confidence shattered, and I began angrily venting, with my brother patiently listening until I had gotten everything out. Once I was calm, my brother advised me, "You need to formulate a strategy for dealing with this, and I'll help you." I initially voiced a wish to save the marriage, but my brother talked me through it. He pointed out that I had a rare chance to leave the marriage without serious repercussions, suggesting an annulment might be possible. He reminded me of a childhood story where a neighbor's wife was granted an annulment after the husband cheated only 3 months into the marriage. By the end of our discussion, I still felt awful, but I had a definite plan for what to do next. The following day, which was Friday, I had chosen to take the day off since I had worked for 10-hour days the previous week, earning me a day off. I spent that day researching attorneys and managed to secure appointments with 3 different law firms. Throughout the day, Mary bombarded me with non-stop calls and texts. She didn't go to work and her voice sounded frantic. I chose to ignore her calls but did reach out to both our parents to explain the entire situation. I also called her best friend and cancelled the double date we had scheduled with her and her boyfriend for Friday night. Perhaps I shouldn't have disclosed our personal issues to everyone, but I was consumed by anger and a desire for revenge at that point. Later in the afternoon, my sister-in-law called, mentioning that Mary had been trying to contact her all day. She informed me that Mary had driven to their house twice to see if I was there, which was a 30-minute drive. Illustrating her frantic state, my sister-in-law told Mary that I wasn't there and that they knew my whereabouts but couldn't divulge the information. The messages from my wife were essentially incoherent, filled with frantic pleas amid sobs, containing all the things you'd expect from someone in her situation. On Friday evening, I treated my brother, sister-in-law, and parents to a lovely dinner at a nice restaurant. It was a kind of celebratory dinner for my brother and sister-in-law, since their 10th anniversary was just around the corner. We had an enjoyable time, although our conversation mostly revolved around Mary and me. They all believed it would be best for me to seek an annulment, move forward and start anew. However, I wasn't entirely convinced. They proposed that I meet with Mary the following day to break the news to her. My sister-in-law also insisted that I request a prenatal paternity test to determine the biological father of her baby. I had no prior knowledge that such tests were possible. I assured them that if the baby turned out to be mine, I would wholeheartedly love and be the best father to the child. If not, that would be Mary's responsibility to address. Throughout the meal, Mary called me 4 times, while my brother, mom, and sister-in-law each received 2 calls from her. The next day, Friday, was my scheduled day off, which I'd earned by working for 10-hour shifts the prior week. I spent the day looking for lawyers and secured consultations with 3 different firms. Mary called and texted me relentlessly all day. She hadn't gone to work, and her voice sounded hysterical. While I ignored her calls, I did contact both sets of parents to explain the whole affair. I also cancelled the double date. We had planned for Friday night with her best friend and her boyfriend. Perhaps I shouldn't have shared our private issues with so many people, but I was blinded by rage and a need for retribution at the time. Later that afternoon, my sister-in-law called to say Mary had been trying to reach her all day. She mentioned that Mary had driven to their house twice, a 30-minute trip, to see if I was there, showing how desperate she was. My sister-in-law told Mary the first wasn't there and that while they knew where I was, they couldn't tell her. My wife's messages were largely nonsensical, frantic pleas mixed with crying, exactly what you'd expect from someone in her predicament. That Friday evening, I took my brother, sister-in-law, and parents out for a celebratory dinner at a nice restaurant, as my brother and sister-in-law's 10th anniversary was approaching. We had a pleasant time, though our conversation mainly focused on Mary and me. Everyone believed I should pursue the annulment, move on, and start over. I wasn't entirely convinced, however. They suggested I meet with Mary the next day to inform her of my decision. My sister-in-law also strongly urged me to demand a prenatal paternity test to find out who the baby's biological father was, something I didn't know was possible. I assured them that if the baby was mine, I would wholeheartedly embrace him or her and be the best father. Otherwise, Mary would be solely responsible for the child. During the meal, Mary called me 4 times, and my brother, mother, and sister-in-law each received 2 calls from her. Before leaving the restaurant, I phoned Mary and arranged to meet her the next morning at my brother's house. She had suggested meeting at our apartment, but I declined. I preferred a neutral location with other people nearby. When she arrived, I immediately informed her that our marriage was over and I intended to file for an annulment. I also expressed my desire for a paternity test. She became very emotional and distraught. She immediately fell apart and knelt before me, swearing that the child was mine. She claimed to be certain on the conception date. I insisted on the paternity test and assured her that if the child was indeed mine, I would be the best father possible. However, if it turned out otherwise, I would not have any role in the child's life. She cried and I sat with her for over an hour while she sobbed. Eventually, I asked her to leave, and though she did so reluctantly before we left the restaurant, I called Mary and set up a meeting for the next morning at my brother's house. She wanted to meet at our apartment, but I refused, preferring a neutral place where others were close by. When she arrived, I immediately told her that our marriage was finished and that I planned to file for an annulment. I also expressed my need for a paternity test. She became extremely emotional and distressed, instantly breaking down and kneeling before me, swearing the child was mine and claiming she was sure based on the date of conception. I stood firm on the paternity test, promising her that if the baby was mine, I would be an exemplary father, but if not, I would have no involvement in the child's life. She cried, and I stayed with her for over an hour as she sobbed. Finally, I asked her to leave, which she did, though very unwillingly. Come Monday, things took a strange turn around 10 a.m. I received a voicemail from Mary's boss. Let's call him Tony. Tony is a man in his 40s with a wife and 3 teenage kids. In the message, Tony mentioned that Mary had informed him about our situation. He expressed a desire to encourage me not to give up on the marriage, citing his own experience with infidelity early in his marriage, which they had overcome and grown stronger from. He suggested meeting and discussing the matter as he believed he could offer guidance to help me navigate this situation. This was unusual, very unusual. Until then, I had only encountered him a few times and our interactions were limited to the typical pleasantries. I initially brushed it off and had no intention of returning his call. However, a few hours later I received another message from him, this time with a tone of exasperation and nervousness. He said, "Hey, it's Tony again. I understand if you don't want to talk to me and I don't blame you, but I'd like to clarify what happened and assure you that it meant nothing to either of us. Mary loves you and I love my wife. Please call me back. I believe we can find a way to resolve this." What a shock. That piece of garbage was the affair partner. I was so furious and filled with rage that I had to take the rest of the day off. Later that evening I received another message from Tony. His tone sounded desperate this time. He said, "Give me a call, man. I believe we can figure out a solution between the 3 of us to save our marriages." Of course I didn't call him. What a fool. Later that night I got a call from one of Mary's cousins. "Let's call him Kevin. Kevin and I have become close friends over the past few years." I answered and he asked me to explain what's happening. As Everyone in the family is in turmoil over your separation from Mary. The first shared all the sorted details with Kevin and he couldn't believe it. He remarked, "Wow, the rest of the family isn't aware of this. They assume you left Mary just because she's pregnant. They think you're the villain when it's actually Mary." Throughout the evening I continued to receive calls and texts from Mary. It was evident that she was emotionally fragile. She pleaded with me to call her back and have a conversation, emphasizing how desperately she needed me. She expressed that my support was crucial in helping her navigate the difficult situation she had created. I didn't respond because I was thoroughly disgusted with her. On Tuesday there was no contact from Mary at all. Then on Wednesday evening she left me a voicemail. Her voice sounded tired and melancholic as she said, "I've lost the baby." She requested that I come over to comfort her as she felt completely devastated. Despite my strong desire to be there for her in that moment, I decided it wouldn't be wise. Additionally, my attorney had advised me against having any contact with her without a witness. I'm currently overwhelmed with guilt and questioning my choices. I still have strong feelings for Mary and she occupies my thoughts constantly. I long for things to return to how they were before. Sometimes I even wish she had never revealed the affair. Even if the baby wasn't mine, I'm certain I won't find someone like her again. What would you recommend I do? On Monday, things took an unusual turn. Around 10 a.m., I received a voicemail from Mary's boss, a man in his 40s with a wife and 3 teenage children, who we'll call Tony. In the message, Tony mentioned that Mary had informed him of our situation. He said he wanted to encourage me not to abandon the marriage, referencing his own early marital infidelity that they had overcome and which ultimately strengthened their relationship. He suggested we meet, as he believed he could offer advice to help me through this. This was highly peculiar. Until then, I'd only met him a few times for brief, polite exchanges. Initially, I dismissed the call, having no intention of returning it. However, a few hours later, he left another message, this time sounding frustrated and nervous. He said, "Hey, it's Tony again. I get it if you don't want to talk to me, and I don't blame you, but I want to clarify what happened and assure you it meant nothing to either of us. Mary loves you, and I love my wife. Please call me back. I believe we can find a solution." The shock was immense. That piece of trash was the man she cheated with. I was so intensely furious and enraged that I had to take the rest of the day off work. Later that evening, Tony left another message, his tone now desperate. He said, "Give me a call, man. I think we can work out a solution between the three of us to save both our marriages." Of course, I never called the idiot back. That night, I got a call from one of Mary's cousins, Kevin, who has become a close friend over the years. I answered, and he asked me to explain what was happening, as the whole family was in chaos over my split from Mary. I shared every ugly detail with Kevin, and he was astonished. He remarked, "Wow, the rest of the family has no idea about this. They think you only left Mary because she's pregnant. They see you as the villain, but Mary is actually the one at fault." Throughout the evening, Mary continued to call and text me. She was clearly in a very fragile state, pleading for me to call her back and talk, emphasizing how much she needed my support to get through the mess she had created. I didn't reply because I was completely disgusted with her. On Tuesday, there was absolutely no communication from Mary. Then, on Wednesday evening, she left a voicemail. Her voice sounded exhausted and sad as she said, "I've lost the baby." She asked me to come over to comfort her because she was utterly heartbroken. Despite a powerful instinct to be there for her in that moment, I concluded it would be unwise. Furthermore, my lawyer had advised me not to have any contact with her unless a witness was present. I am now grappling with immense guilt and second-guessing my actions. I still have strong feelings for Mary. She is constantly on my mind. I desperately wish things could go back to the way they were. Sometimes, I even wish she had never told me about the affair, even if the baby wasn't mine. I am certain I will never find anyone else like her. What do you advise I do? Hello everyone, I'm returning here to provide you with an update on my situation. I'm still in the process of getting divorced, or more accurately annulled. This should be finalized within the next 45 days. Since my last update, numerous events have unfolded and I've come across some new details regarding my wife's affair. Where should I begin? You may recall Kevin from my original post, who happens to be Mary's cousin and with whom I've developed a close friendship. His mother is Mary's maternal aunt. She receives direct updates from Mary's mom, and Kevin then shares these details with me. Naturally, they remain unaware of this. According to Kevin, Mary reported Tony, her boss, to HR, and as a result of an investigation, he was terminated from his job. Contrary to Mary's initial claim that the affair concluded before Christmas, Kevin revealed that it actually began the week before Thanksgiving and continued until Mary discovered her pregnancy, which was just a couple of weeks before she broke the news to me. Mary didn't miscarry the baby. She underwent a medical procedure because Tony pressured her after she confided in him about the affair in pregnancy, along with my intention to divorce her. According to Kevin, Tony was angered because their agreement was to keep everything secret. Mary eventually couldn't bear the guilt and told me Mary told her mom that she believed I would forgive her for the affair and that we could have a happy family. This showed a lack of respect. According to Kevin, who also mentioned that Mary told me the same thing about the baby being Tony's based on the conception date. As I mentioned in my earlier update, Tony has lost his job and there's talk that his wife is pursuing a divorce. Additionally, based on what Kevin shared, Mary has initiated a legal case against her company and Tony, alleging a hostile work environment. Surprisingly, she is still employed there, which I find rather perplexing. That's the latest information I have for now. Hello again, everyone. I'm back to give you the latest on my situation. I'm still working through the process of getting a divorce, or more precisely, an annulment, which should be completed within the next 45 days. Since my last post, many things have occurred, and I've learned more about my wife's affair. Let's start with the new information. You might remember Kevin from my first post, Mary's cousin, with whom I'm close. His mother is Mary's aunt on her side. She gets updates directly from Mary's mom, and Kevin then passes these details to me. They, of course, don't know he's doing this. Kevin informed me that Mary reported her boss, Tony, to HR, and an investigation led to his termination. Contrary to Mary's original claim that the affair ended before Christmas, Kevin disclosed that it actually started the week before Thanksgiving and continued right up until she found out she was pregnant, which was only a few weeks before she told me. Mary did not suffer a miscarriage. She had an abortion because Tony pressured her after she told him about the pregnancy, the affair, and my plan to divorce her. Kevin said Tony was furious because they had agreed to keep everything confidential. Mary eventually confessed because she couldn't live with the guilt. Mary told her mother that she thought I would forgive the affair and that we could still have a happy family, a sign of great disrespect, according to Kevin. He also confirmed that Mary had told me the baby was Tony's, based on the conception timeline. As I mentioned, Tony has been fired, and there are rumors that his wife is filing for divorce. Furthermore, Kevin shared that Mary has filed a lawsuit against her company and Tony, alleging a hostile work environment. What I find confusing is that she is still working there. That's all the new information I have for now.